On a scorching July afternoon in 2019, the serene facade of suburban bliss was shattered in a manner that would leave an indelible mark on the community for years. At the heart of this tragedy were the Hendersons. Thaddeus, a 45-year-old investment banker known for his relentless work ethic and community engagement, and his wife, Margot, a 43-year-old part-time yoga instructor celebrated for her vibrant spirit and contagious laughter. They had been integral members of the community for over a decade. Their seemingly perfect marriage, the envy of many. Next door lived the Coopers, Elaine, a widow, and her 19-year-old son, Liam, a college sophomore home for the summer. The Coopers had moved in 5 years earlier. Though they kept to themselves more than most, they were generally well regarded by their neighbors. No one could have foreseen that these ordinary lives would intersect in such a devastating manner. Thaddeus had always been fueled by ambition. Growing up in a working-class family in rural Iowa, he climbed the social ladder through sheer determination and an almost obsessive work ethic. By his early 30s, he had made a name for himself as a rising star in finance, earning admiration from colleagues for his sharp analytical skills and respect from clients for his straightforward approach to wealth management. Margot Sinclair, as she was known before marriage, had a different path. The daughter of a college professor and an artist, she grew up in an environment that cherished creativity and self-expression. She pursued modern dance at university with dreams of a performing career until a knee injury during her senior year forced her to pivot toward yoga and wellness coaching. Their paths crossed at a charity gala in 2003. Thaddeus, already successful but lacking social finesse, was instantly captivated by Margot's energy and charm. For Margot, Thaddeus represented stability and the promise of a comfortable life that would allow her to pursue her passions without financial concern. They married the following year in an extravagant ceremony that became the talk of their social circle. The early years of their marriage were filled with happiness as Thaddeus's career continued to thrive. He took pride in providing Margot with the life he believed she deserved. Margot immersed herself in being the ideal corporate wife, hosting dinner parties and attending social events essential for Thaddeus's networking, while also teaching yoga part-time at an upscale studio, finding fulfillment in helping others achieve balance and inner peace. However, as time passed, cracks began to emerge in their carefully curated life. Thaddeus's work hours lengthened as his ambition drove him to pursue ever larger deals and clients. He was rarely home before 9 p.m., and even when present, his mind often wandered to emails or market updates. Approaching her 40s, Margot grew increasingly restless. The yoga classes and charity committees once energized her began to feel empty. She started questioning whether she had traded her dreams for what felt like a gilded cage. The couple's struggle with infertility added further strain to their relationship. By summer 2019, their marriage had become an elaborate facade. Outwardly, they still appeared as the golden couple. Thaddeus recently closing a significant deal that positioned him for partnership, while Margot's yoga classes thrived due to her warmth and apparent serenity. Yet behind closed doors, they were essentially strangers. Conversations were scarce and focused on schedules or social obligations. Physical intimacy had become infrequent. Each touch laden with unspoken resentments and unmet expectations, neither Thaddeus nor Margot dared to confront how far apart they had grown. It felt easier to maintain the illusion than to face the emptiness between them. Unbeknownst to them, this unacknowledged divide would soon catalyze a tragedy that would not only disrupt their lives, but also shake the entire Riverside community. The Coopers had settled into their home next door to the Hendersons in 2004 after the passing of Elaine Cooper's husband, Dr. Reginald Cooper, a respected oncologist who succumbed to the very illness he dedicated his life to fighting. This left Elaine to raise their son, Liam, alone, initially struggling to adapt to life in this new community after moving from their modest home in Savin. Paul Ware memories haunted every corner. Elaine found solace among books and tending to her garden, which soon became the envy of their neighborhood. Liam was just 14 when they moved in. A lanky introvert, more comfortable with computers than people, transition to a new school proved challenging. He often became a target for bullies, who mocked his secondhand clothes and quiet nature. During this difficult time, Thaddeus Henderson took Liam under his wing, offering him opportunities to mow lawns and perform odd jobs around the neighborhood. Let me know you have a break. Over the next 5 years, Liam transformed from an awkward teenager into a striking young man, His natural intelligence found its true expression through his computer science studies at university. Despite his newfound confidence, Liam remained deeply devoted to his mother, Elaine. He worried about her feelings of isolation and loneliness, making it a point to return home most weekends. Even when friends were planning parties or road trips, it was during one of these weekend visits in early June that Liam encountered Margot Henderson in an entirely new light. Elaine often expressed her gratitude for the Henderson kindness, particularly Margot's efforts to include her in neighborhood activities. She frequently praised Margot's generosity, blissfully unaware of the complex emotions brewing beneath the surface of her son's polite demeanor. The spark that ignited the affair between Margot Henderson and Liam Cooper was as unexpected as it was intense. It happened on a warm evening in early June during one of the legendary summer barbecues hosted by the Henderson. Thaddeus, as usual, was entertaining guests near the grill with tales of his latest financial triumphs. Margot, feeling isolated amidst the crowd, retreated to the pool house to replenish the ice bucket. At that moment, Liam, who had been reluctantly dragged to the party by his mother, sought refuge from the noise and forced socializing, entering the pool house without realizing it was occupied. He found Margot struggling with a large bag of ice. Their eyes met, and in that instant, something shifted between them. He moved to assist her with the ice, their hands brushing together as they stood, momentarily frozen in place. The coldness of the ice contrasted sharply with the heat building between them. Margot broke the silence first. Her voice low and husky as she thanked him. Liam, usually articulate, found himself stammering in response. That brief encounter set the stage for what was to come in the following week. Margot and Liam began manufacturing reasons to spend time together, Margot asking for help with her laptop and Liam offering assistance in her gardening. Each interaction was charged with an undercurrent of attraction that neither dared to acknowledge. Their first kiss occurred nearly a month after the barbecue while Liam was helping Margot prepare for one of her yoga classes at a local park. As they finished setting up, a sudden summer storm erupted, forcing them to seek shelter under a nearby gazebo, laughing and breathless as rain poured around them. Margot looked at Liam and felt an overwhelming surge of desire she hadn't yet experienced. Years before she could reconsider, she leaned in and kissed him. From that moment on, their affair escalated rapidly. They became reckless, driven by Liam's youthful passion and Margot's desperate need to feel alive again. They met in secluded spots around town, the back row of a local cinema, in hidden corners of the public library, and most dangerously at the Henderson home when Thaddeus was at work. Each encounter left them craving more. Age differences faded away amidst their stolen moments. Margot felt rejuvenated as she rediscovered parts of herself she thought were long gone. While Liam was intoxicated by Margot's experience and the thrill of their forbidden relationship. However, as summer progressed, maintaining their secret began to take its toll. Close calls became more frequent, a neighbor nearly catching them in an embrace, or Elaine casting suspicious glances whenever Margot's name came up too often in conversation. Guilt weighed heavily on both. Liam grappled with betraying Thaddeus, a man who had shown him nothing but kindness, while Margot found herself lying increasingly to her husband. Each deception further cracking the foundation of her marriage. Despite these risks and feelings of guilt, neither seemed capable of ending their affair. They were caught in a whirlwind of passion and need, blind to the devastating consequences looming ahead. On July 15th, 2019, a hot and humid day, heavy with the promise of an approaching storm Riverside, stirred to life as residents prepared for another week filled with routine and work. For Thaddeus Henderson, it began like any other day. He woke early, donned one of his impeccably tailored suits, and left for the office before Margot had even stirred from sleep. Margot awoke later with her mind racing over plans for the day ahead. Thaddeus had informed her the night before that he would be working late due to a crucial client dinner that could secure his partnership deal. For Margot, this meant an opportunity. She texted Liam with a racing heart, suggesting he come over that afternoon. Liam had been agonizing over their affair for days and saw Margot's message as a chance to end things face to face. He replied simply with okay, resolving to break it off before things spiraled further out of control. The day dragged on for both. Margot went through her morning yoga class with nervous energy that her students couldn't help but notice while Liam struggled to focus on lines of code at his summer job, his mind constantly drifting back to thoughts of Margot and their impending conversation. At 2:30 p.m., Liam made his way next door, glancing around furtively to ensure no neighbors were watching him enter. Margot ushered him inside quickly, her face flushed with excitement and anxiety. It was Liam who broke the silence first, starting to say they needed to talk. Margot misread his intention and cut him off with a passionate kiss driven by an urgent need to feel desire. Despite his reservations, Liam found himself responding, his resolve weakened by Margot's intensity. What followed was a blur of discarded clothes and tangled limbs as they made their way to the master bedroom, all thoughts of ending their affair temporarily forgotten as they lost themselves in each other. Meanwhile, across town, Thaddeus Henderson sat in his office, frowning at his computer screen. The numbers for an important client presentation weren't adding up, and he realized he would need to redo a significant portion of his work. Frustration mounting, he made a snap decision to head home, regroup, and return later to finish before the dinner. As he pulled into the driveway at 3:45 p.m., he noticed Liam Cooper's beat-up Honda parked a short distance down the street, dismissing it as Liam likely helping Elaine with Aaron. Thaddeus unlocked the front door. The house was unusually quiet upon his entry, and something felt off. A half-empty glass of wine sat on the coffee table, uncharacteristic for Margot at this time of day. Then he heard a muffled sound coming from upstairs, frowning. He climbed the stairs, the noise growing louder as he approached the master bedroom. What he saw when he opened the door would be forever etched in his memory. His wife, the woman he had loved for 15 years, was in their bed with Liam Cooper, the very young man he had mentored and trusted. With a roar of rage and pain, Thaddeus lunged forward, his hands, accustomed to manipulating numbers and shaking on business deals, curled into fists as he grabbed Liam, yanking him off the bed. Margot screamed, scrambling to cover herself and separate the two men, but her efforts were in vain. Thaddeus's first punch connected squarely with Liam's jaw, sending the younger man stumbling backward. Fueled by adrenaline and fear, Liam fought back. The two men grappled violently, crashing into the dresser and sending framed photos and trinkets scattering across the floor. In the chaos, no one noticed a heavy crystal bookend tumble from atop the dresser until Thaddeus, blinded by rage, seized it and brought it down onto Liam's head with a sickening thud. The sound echoed ominously in the sudden silence that followed. Liam crumpled to the floor, blood pooling rapidly around his motionless form. Margot's scream pierced through the air as the full horror of what had just transpired sank in for everyone present. As storm clouds gathered outside and sirens wailed in the distance, lives were irrevocably changed. The idyllic facade of Riverside had been shattered. Nothing would ever be the same again. The piercing wail of police sirens shattered the usual tranquility of the community. Neighbors peered out from behind curtains, curiosity mingling with apprehension as squad cars and an ambulance screeched to a halt in front of the Henderson residence. The first officers on scene encountered a tableau of horror that would haunt them for years. Inside, they found a shocked Thaddeus Henderson sitting on the edge of the bed with his hands covering his face, blood staining his palms. Margot was barely clothed and hysterical. The room bore all the marks of a violent struggle, overturned furniture, shattered glass, and smears of blood on the hardwood floor. Detective Ava Rossi, a veteran of the homicide unit, took charge of the scene. Her first priority was securing medical attention for Liam Cooper as paramedics worked feverishly to stabilize him. Rossi began piecing together events that led to this tragedy. Thaddeus remained in a state of shock and was taken into custody without resistance while Margot was questioned separately. Their fragmented and emotional accounts painted a picture of long simmering marital discord that had exploded into violence as word spread through the neighborhood. A crowd began to gather at the police cordon. Among them was Elaine Cooper, who collapsed in grief upon learning of her son's critical condition. She was quickly whisked away to the hospital, where Liam fought for his life in intensive care. The investigation moved swiftly. Forensic teams combed through the Henderson home collecting evidence and taking photographs. The crystal bookendo, a potential murder weapon, was carefully bagged and tagged. Neighbors were interviewed. Their statements added context to both families' relationships. One neighbor recalled hearing raised voices from inside earlier that afternoon, but dismissed it as loud television noise. Another noted seeing Liam enter the Henderson home around 2:30 p.m., finding it odd given Thaddeus' usual work schedule. As night fell, reality set in. Liam Cooper was pronounced dead at 9:47 p.m., never having regained consciousness. The charge against Thaddeus Henderson escalated from assault to second-degree murder. In subsequent days, more details emerged. Margot, overwhelmed with guilt and facing intense scrutiny, admitted to her affair with Liam during an emotional statement at the police station that outlined their relationship timeline leading up to that tragic afternoon. Thaddeus remained silent under advisement from his hastily retained attorney. However, colleagues painted a picture of a man under immense pressure working long hours for what seemed like an attainable partnership deal. None suspected just how deep his marital issues ran or how capable he was of violence. As evidence mounted against him, Detective Rossi understood that in public opinion, there would be no clear villains or heroically victims shaped by secrets and lies that had culminated in this devastating way. What no one anticipated was a shocking plot twist that would upend everything, including the lives of both families involved. The trial began on a crisp autumn morning 6 months after events had shaken Riverside to its core. The county courthouse, a stately building adorned with red brick and white column, was surrounded by reporters and curious onlookers. Inside, tension filled the air as the judge called court to order. Prosecuting attorney Veronica Talbota Sharp, minded litigator known for her incisive arguments, laid out the state's case in her opening statement. She painted Thaddeus Henderson as a man consumed by rage and jealousy who had brutally murdered a young man at the height of his life. Her words were measured yet impactful as she promised to prove Henderson's guilt beyond any reasonable doubt. The defense attorney countered with his own narrative, portraying Thaddeus as a devoted husband and community pillar pushed to his limits by an unimaginable betrayal. He suggested that Liam's death was a tragic accident resulting from an altercation that spiraled out of control. As proceedings progressed, forensic experts testified about blood spatter patterns and details regarding how Liam sustained his fatal injury, while neighbors recounted their observations from that fateful day. If you have more text or need further adjustments or sections rewritten, feel free to let me know. Witnesses spoke to the personalities and reputations of both Thaddeus and Liam, but it was Margot Henderson's testimony that truly captivated the courtroom. Over 2 grueling days on the stand, she laid bare the disintegration of her marriage and the evolution of her relationship with Liam. Her voice trembled as she recounted the moment Thaddeus walked in on them, describing the horror of watching the confrontation unfold. Under cross-examination, defense attorney Sterling attempted to portray her as an unfaithful wife whose actions had driven her husband to temporary insanity. However, Margot remained resolute, accepting her part in the tragedy while firmly insisting that nothing could justify Liam's death. Elaine Cooper's testimony was brief yet powerful. Still grief-stricken, she spoke of her son's kindness and his dreams for the future, tragically cut short by an act of violence. Her quiet dignity in the face of unimaginable loss moved many in the courtroom to tears. As the trial neared its conclusion, all eyes turned to Thaddeus Henderson. Against his lawyer's advice, he chose to take the stand. His testimony was a study in contrast, moments of apparent remorse interspersed with flashes of anger that had led to Liam's death. He spoke of the pressure he felt at work, the growing distance in his marriage, and the shock of discovering his wife's infidelity. When recounting the fight with Liam, Thaddeus claimed he had never intended to cause serious harm. He had merely lost control. As proceedings continued, expert witnesses from psychology were called to provide insight into the minds involved in this tragic event. Dr. Cho explained that Thaddeus's actions could be understood through the lens of what psychologists term intermittent explosive disorder, characterized by episodes of violent behavior disproportionate to the situation at hand. She pointed at Thaddeus's high stress job, his unexpressed marital dissatisfaction, and the shock of discovering his wife's affair as contributing factors to his violent outburst. However, under cross-examination, Dr. Shaw conceded that while these factors could explain Thaddeus's behavior, they did not excuse that many individuals face similar stressors without resorting to violence. The defense also called a specialist in marriage and family therapy to testify about the psychological impact of infidelity. Fredman described the profound sense of betrayal and loss of identity that can accompany a spouse's affair, likening it to psychological trauma capable of triggering extreme emotional responses. The psychological analyses presented during the trial painted a complex picture of human behavior and motivation. They highlighted how personal history, societal expectations, and immediate circumstances can collide to create a perfect storm of tragedy. After 7 grueling weeks, filled with testimonies, evidence presentation, and legal arguments, the fate of Thaddeus Henderson rested in the hands of the jury. As Judge Blackwell sent the 12 men and women off to deliberate, a tense silence enveloped the courtroom. Following a brief recess to consider all factors, Judge Blackwell returned to deliver her sentence, citing the violent nature of the crime while balancing it against Thaddeus. Lack of prior criminal history and the unique circumstances surrounding the case, she sentenced him to 18 years in state prison with the possibility of parole after 12 years. As Thaddeus was led away in handcuffs, the full weight of tragedy descended upon the courtroom. There were no victors, your only lives irrevocably altered by a moment of passion and a split-second act of violence. Outside, as news of the verdict spread, reactions among the crowd were mixed. Some felt justice had been served, while others argued that the sentence was either too harsh or too lenient. Yet all agreed on one thing: the events that had unfolded in Riverside would leave an indelible mark on their community for years to come.